Welcome back to the Early Weigh-In podcast. And this Saturday is UFC Vegas 14, and last-minute replacement savior Paul Felder stepping in to take on RDA in replacement of Islam Makhachev, and such a good fight, man. I'm so excited for that one, and we did end up having a positive week again, even after Boser shit the bed for us.
Our late picks are really working out for us. I think we're like 4-0 right now on our post weigh-in picks, so I'm happy with it.
We've really been paying attention to weigh-ins and snagging some great picks. So before we start, man, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We're 4 subscribers away from someone getting a poster here. We'll do some type of contest. We'll pick from you guys who have been in the comments and the subscribers and stuff. So we'll send that off to one of you guys pretty soon, man. But just to go over last week, Gustavo Lopez kicked off the night with the first round finish, I believe, and he looked miles better than his opponent there. And I know right before the fight they were talking about having like 50 to 100 rounds together, and he looked like he knew where he had the advantage and took it down, and it was pretty easy.
I think so too, and it was actually a little surprising because Burchak looked so big in weigh-ins. I thought that he would give him more problems, especially on the ground, but it didn't go that way at all. Then we had Max Griffin, who we should have cashed on both the Max Griffin straight and the decision prop until Brahim's ear busted open.
Right.
Max Griffin did exactly what we thought he was going to do, was beating him to the punch and really looked solid in there. I think he's kind of revamped his career.
Yeah, no, we put like 1.5 units on him. We were confident that he was going to come out and do exactly what he did. And Darren Elkins got the submission win like I said he was going to, but man, that fight got dangerous for a while.
It's every Darren Elkins fight ever. It's like, even though he won that solid, it's hard to bank on Derek Elkins.
For sure.
Yeah. Moving on, Alexander Romanov. I thought initially Rogerio de Lima was touching him up on the feet, and those inside leg kicks did play a part, and I think that only encouraged Romanov to get the takedown even sooner. He was dominant, though, whenever he did get the takedowns, one of my favorite fighters to watch now.
For sure, that forearm choke was
pretty
nasty. He went out. But moving on to the next fight, man, was Trevin Giles and Bevon Lewis. The first, loss for the night there for us. And bad read on our part. Maybe Bevon Lewis just didn't show up because he did not look good. But props to Trevin Giles because he was so much faster on the feet and didn't even have to utilize the wrestling. His hands looked good.
I couldn't agree more. Lewis, he needs some time to develop his game. Being only, I think, 7-3 now, he looked like he was an amateur out there and just really didn't perform, and I was pretty disappointed in it. Yeah. Moving on, Claudia Gadelha versus Yaonan Yan. Yan, she doesn't mind throwing down.
She does not.
She proved that again on fight night, and so I think overall it was a good win. Her takedown defense looked good, and I was happy with our bet.
I was too, man. Cashed on her, and we knew it was going to be dangerous, especially in the first round with Claudia Gadelha and the takedown. But after that, Claudia's cardio she gasses herself and starts getting hit on the feet, man. Worked just like we thought it was going to. We moved on to Giga, another play that we cashed. Giga finally got his first finish in the UFC, and I see people giving him some crap because he doesn't fight the best of competition. But at the same time, he's not getting paid very well. So why do you want to take the step up in competition and, risk taking an L and putting, setting your career back a little bit? Why not wait and get the new contract before you step up?
And I'm one of those people. He's the ultimate can crusher.
He is.
But at least he did crush this can,
Yeah,
I mean, he looked like a minus 800 favorite, so props to him.
Yeah.
Moving on, Ronnie Barcelos versus Khalid Taha. I think anybody other than Taha is going night-night.
Yeah.
But Taha's one of the toughest dudes and gave us a great fight.
He did, man. That fight was awesome. Barcelos looked good even after that layoff. And then moving on to Tanner Boser, man, that really kind of put a damper on our night. We would have finished up over 3 units if he would have came out and did what everybody thought he was going to do. But props to Andre, man. Maybe he landed a couple good shots and made Tanner a little gun shy, but in my opinion, shots are shots, and the leg shots are doing a lot of damage, and I feel like Boser should have probably got the nod.
I think Boser edged it out.
Yeah.
That being said, 3 judges gave 3 different winning rounds to Boser, so it really was anybody's fight.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily mad at the decision, but I think Boser was the more active fighter, and I think there was a lot of weight being thrown on Arlovsky's hard shots that Boser was just eating. It didn't even phase him, but they were harder shots, so I give him that.
Right.
And at 40 whatever years old, Arlovsky still got something in him. So
both the guys over 41 this weekend.
Yeah, not bad. And even
I know
Ronnie Barcelos.
Yeah.
He's getting up there in age as well, and still looked awesome.
He did.
Now, we called the Glover Teixeira win. I think weigh-ins gave us a lot of confidence in the Glover pick. Now, we were kind of on him already, but it solidified our decision whenever we saw him in weigh-ins.
Yeah, Santos, for some reason, just didn't look too hot on the scales. Looked a little bit better as he was starting to hydrate a little bit. But, we definitely saw the weight issues, and it showed. He gassed early, and, don't get me wrong, I thought we were going to lose there for a while. Santos almost put him out, but we've seen that in the last 5 fights, man. Glover gets touched up and almost gets put away and somehow comes back to win these,
Yeah, and I really do think that the black belt should be in quotation marks when it comes to Thiago Santos. He doesn't look good on the ground, and he's proven that time and time again. Glover made him look like a white belt.
He did. It was nowhere near the level of competition.
Mm-mm.
We got an excellent 12 fights, I believe, this fight. Ready to dive into them, man. So go ahead and kick it off.
Yeah, to start off the card, we're going into bantamweight. Tony Gravely, 19-6 versus Geraldo de Freitas at 12-5. Tony Gravely, he's coming off his UFC loss against Brett Johns. It's a tough opponent to start your career on. He did come off the Contender Series, and to be fair, his only losses on his record are to UFC caliber opponents. Patchy Mix, Mirab Davashvili, Brett Johns, Manny Bermudez. Those are all like quality losses. If you're gonna lose to somebody before the UFC, those are ones that you can accept.
Right.
Especially whenever he was younger and had only started fighting, I think 4 or 5 years ago. So that's definitely nothing that I'm taking away from him, and he's very active. I know that he's fought multiple times, like maybe 7-8 fights a year.
25 fights in 5 years.
Yeah, so no doubt he's making improvements every single fight, and much needed experience, especially if he's getting in so late in the game. He's training at American Top Team, so he's definitely sharpening his skills whenever he isn't in the octagon. Now, a knock on Gravely, 5 of his 6 losses are coming by submission, and that really gives me worries with De Freitas, who is a BJJ specialist. De Freitas, he's coming off a split decision loss to Chris Gutierrez in 2019, which is kind of controversial. A lot of people thought that De Freitas had won that. That being said, De Freitas has had problems losing by split decision in the past. All 3 of his last 14 fights that he's lost are all by split decision, and think that he probably needs to have a little bit more to try and push the action a little bit more to win over those judges, because he can't lay on his back. He can't have a low volume attack. He needs to push the pace. So I do think that he's going to be the bigger opponent coming in here. His UFC debut was at featherweight against, at the time, undefeated Felipe Corrales, who was 8-0, and he looked good, man. So here at bantamweight, especially against a guy who's 5'5", I think that he's going to be the bigger presence in the octagon. And even if he does end up on his back, I don't think he's lost. I think that his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu could come into play with Tony Gravely. And I do think that he's the value side of this fight.
I agree with you, man. I do think the value on this side is definitely on De Freitas. So for me, it's a close fight. It really is, man. I feel like, both of these guys have strengths that play into each other's weaknesses. You touched on Gravely's just overall experience, not only how active he's been, but who he's fought in the last 5 years. It is leaps and bounds of improvement, and it is full-time at ATT now. I watched an interview, and he's moved his family down there and stuff. It's not just going there for fight camps. It's, I'm training every time I'm in the gym. It's with the best now. So I really do think we're going to see a really good Tony Gravely. You talked about how active he is. He moves. He's got a ton of movement on the feet. He's got a very sneaky right hand, and he is a very, very good wrestler. He's got a super, super good power double leg. And Freitas, the fight with Corrales there, he was actually the bigger guy in that fight as well, which is, something we're going to see here. He got Corrales down to the mat, but he would give up positions a lot at times, and to a Tony Gravely, who's a good wrestler, we're going to see scramble. I'm kind of worried about, how good he's going to be on his back, because I think he does get a little too comfortable there sometimes, and that could be the reason to the split decision losses that we see. So I think he needs to be super active on the mat. If Gravely gets there, he needs to threaten with submission so that Gravely doesn't get as comfortable, maybe just laying and praying on him. But actually, man, on the feet, I saw some really good things that I like from De Freitas. He's got a really good feint from his takedown where he comes over with the left hook. I really like it, man. And there's not a guy that I see work the body a whole lot like De Freitas does. He's got a good stabbing front kick, and he really does like to work the body, which we've seen Tony Gravely give up that sub in the third round. And so Freitas starts to work the body, and make Gravely work on the ground like that. De Freitas, I think he has value, and I think he has a ton of value in that third round. I haven't made a bet on this fight altogether because, like I said, they both have good strengths that play into the other's weakness. He's a good wrestler. He's going to probably be able to hold him down, but De Freitas has so many submissions to offer, the longer limbs with knees up the middle and stuff. I think it's a good fight, man.
I think so as well.
I'm going to probably lean. I went with the odds makers. I went as for my official pick as Gravely, but as far as bet-wise, I did lay off of it.
I think I'm actually going to go with the Freitas, so that'll be my first underdog pick of the night. And just to give a little idea of the card in the future, I do think that there's going to be quite a few upsets tonight.
Yeah, I think there is very good value.
At least it's set for some upsets because
sure.
The odds don't match what I think the competition levels are.
I'm with you.
Moving on, we're going to heavyweight, and Don'Tale Mayes, who is 7-4, is fighting Roque Martinez at 15-6-2. Here's something that I want to start off with. Both these guys are unproven heavyweights, and we've learned from our past mistakes. This is a fight that I think we're both okay with laying off of.
It is. When I first look at this, the first thing that pops in my head is Anthony Joshua and Andy, or what's his name, Ruiz.
Yes,
that's the first thing that pops into my head when I see this fight.
That's actually not a bad comparison at all. I like that. Roque Martinez coming off an awful debut appearance with Alexander Romanov. It's definitely hard to look good against Romanov, not to mention he took it on short notice. And I think, eye test would tell you Roque Martinez is not UFC caliber. But, we've seen people in the past that, don't have the body for the UFC, but have proven to be, competitive at least. Roque Martinez, he's coming from Ryzen, and he does have a good striking game. He does tend to throw single shots, and he is heavy on his lead foot. So those are some knocks on him for sure. And he's not great at defending takedowns. That's something that I don't think he's going to have to worry about in this Mayes fight. I think Mayes would also prefer to keep it standing on the feet and having it looks like a 9.5-inch reach advantage. I think that he's going to be pretty comfortable on the feet as well. That being said, Don'Tale Mayes, he's 0-2 in the UFC. He has a loss to Alan Crowder on the Contender Series, and I'm not confident in him at all, especially being 7-4 and having half as much experience as Roque Martinez. I think that this is a fight that he could get caught in, and this is another one where it's like I'm not counting out Roque Martinez even at 2-1 dog odds. He has some paths to victory, and I think that he has the experience where he could edge out something.
So he is definitely, Don'Tale Mayes not worthy of the -200 price tag that I think that you have to pay for him. That being said, like I told you, I think it's his fight to lose. It is set up in appearance for him to win. 7-inch height advantage, 9-inch reach advantage. A guy who's a very good kickboxer versus a guy who is going to have to close the distance and take some type of damage getting in, Roque Martinez's path to victory, in my opinion, is really to just push him up against the cage, clinch him, and he's got to take away the distance because he's much slower on the feet. You touched how heavy he is on his lead foot, and Don'Tale Mayes has very, very hard kicks. I think he could really wear out that leg to even limit the movement even more. I like Don'Tale Mayes in this one. He is on a, I think a 2-fight skid at the moment, but it is to, Cyril Gahn and Nascimento, which are two very good grapplers, and that's May's weakness. And now he's got a guy where I think his tools are probably going to shine. I think it's his fight to lose. If you don't want to pay them, the -200, -230 that he is now, it's like a -135 by TKO, something much better to look at there, and in my opinion, set up to happen. It's a 28-year-old versus a 34-year-old. All the physical tools and advantages lean toward Don'Tale Mayes. So, there's an upset brewing there. It could be, but I do got to lead with the odds makers and Dontel Mays. Just not a 100% confident pick.
And I'm with you. I think that I will take Mays as my official pick, but it's one of these unproven heavyweight fights, and I think it's a must-win for both guys. So I wouldn't be surprised if Roque Martinez comes out there guns a-blazing right off the bat and trying to get an early knockout.
I do too. And then moving on to the women's strawweight division, we have Miranda Marcos, who's 10-9, fighting Kanako Murada, who's 11-1, and man, Marcos, 35 years old, lost 3 of her last 4 fights, and coming off the fight against Dern, which one of the just worst fight IQ decisions, you have seen in fight history. Nobody wants to go to the ground with Dern, and Dern slips up and falls to the mat, and Marcos goes to the mat with her and gets subbed within the next 2 minutes. It was one of the worst decisions we've seen in UFC, and I think she's itching to get back and, kind of redeem herself for that. 35 in the skid that she's on. She knows where she's at. I think, training in Canada and the United States, some of the limitations and stuff have been lifted. I think she's going to be, better trained in this fight. And for the first time, she's going to have a size advantage, man. She's 5'4", 5'5", fighting a girl who's 5'1", and just looking at the resumes, it's 10-9, not very, pretty when you first look at it. But man, for the last 6 years, she's fought nothing but UFC level competition, and she snuck out a couple good wins. Kanako Murada, she's a very, very good wrestler on the mat, man. She's got a very good double leg, but what she has that I like, man, in the clinch, she has such good throws, very evident of her judo black belt and stuff, in my opinion. She moves so much, but that's a pretty trend across the Asian fighters. Mm-hmm. They have a ton of movement, a ton of feints and stuff, but I'm not so sure getting these girls to the mat. It's much easier than I think it's going to be Miranda Marcos, and if she can't get this fight to the mat, I feel like Marcos has the better hands. And just a little stat there, Marcos is 3rd in control time in the UFC strawweight division, only behind Claudia Gadelha and
Carla Esparza.
Carla Esparza. So, this girl's no slouch on the mat. She's a good wrestler herself. In my opinion, Kanako's got the question marks that need answered. I like Miranda Marcos at a dog spot. I got her at a plus 145. And I'm even tempted to take her at plus 190 by decision because I feel like that's definitely the way it's going to go.
So officially, I'm going to go with Kanako, but as the odds start to, distance themselves, I do see the value in the Marco side because it is more of a toss-up than the odds are showing right now. Kanako, she's riding a 7-fight win streak, and her only loss in her 12 fights are coming to Rin Nakai, who's 22-2, and those only 2 losses are to UFC caliber talent with Misha Tate and Leslie Smith, both girls who are far bigger than most strawweights. Kanako is an Invicta strawweight champ and a national wrestling champ in Japan, and it shows in her fights. She likes to lean on that, and one thing that I do think holds her back is that she's 5'1", and even in the strawweight division, that's small. Now, Miranda Marcos, she's not used to having this advantage, especially size-wise, against fighters in her division, only standing at 5'4". But you're right, she's highly inconsistent, and that 500 record, it's not necessarily fair to judge that record because of the talent that she's beaten. Mm-hmm. She's beaten Angela Hill, which is, awesome. But, here more recently, her last win is a split decision over Ashley Yoder. And if you're not winning over Ashley Yoder, you shouldn't be in the UFC, right, in my opinion. So, I do think that she's better than what her record shows, but I don't think that she's great. And I do think that it's a good opponent for Kanako coming into this in her UFC debut, and it'll really tell us where she is inside the division. Kanako, 4 of her last 5 wins are by submission, 2 of those being a Von Flue choke. Mm-hmm. And if she is successful in the takedown against Marcos, I think that's where Marcos could could fall short. All of Marcos's wins are by sub or decision, but at the same time, all of her losses are by submission or decision. So I do think that that's where her game falls a little bit short, and that's where Kanako could, implement her game plan and really capitalize on the downfalls of Marcos's game. So officially, I will go with Kanako, although as the odds get further, I don't like playing her at minus 175. Right. If we could still get her at minus 130, I think it would be something I'd push for to play. But again, unproven women's fight, I'm not going to bank on that.
I'm with you, man. And moving on, in the bantamweight division, we have Luis, the last samurai Smolka, 16-7, fighting Jose Alberto Quinonez, who's 8-4. This fight is one that I don't have a clear winner in my opinion. I see a ton of people just all over the Smolka line. And in my opinion, Smolka's a guy that I just look to fade. Smolka's a guy that you don't know what you're going to get when he shows up. This is his second UFC stint. First one did not go like planned. He was on like a 4-fight skid, dealing with substance abuse and stuff outside the octagon. Really showed in his fights. And he's got his stuff back together. He's on his second UFC run. He's 2-2 at bantamweight division now, so he's an ex-flyweight, now at bantamweight. He's not seen the judges yet, so all 4 fights have been finished. And on the other side, Quinonez, man, he's got experience up at 145 and 155 versus an ex-flyweight. And to get him at dog odds, I'm not that confident that I'm willing to push you to play him. But it's worth a little dabble here and then because I just don't trust Luis Smolka with my money. Quinonez, I think we're getting these odds because of the O'Malley fight. I really do. I think because he got dusted and we didn't get to see much. I think that's why we're getting him at such dog odds. But those 4 losses are to Alejandro Perez, Nathaniel Wood, O'Malley, and Davi Ramos, who was a big 155er, who was an excellent jiu-jitsu black belt. He got him to the ground and submitted him. And that's where I think people think Luis Smolka is going to have a super big advantage is on the mat. But Quinonez got jiu-jitsu tatted across his chest, man. He's no slouch on the mat himself, especially when it comes to Luis Smolka. I think this is really a toss-up in my opinion. And I think this is a really live dog that has a chance. A fight that I'm really not too interested in, to be honest with you, but I think Quinonez has a chance, and I'm gonna take the chance on him as a dog.
In a division like bantamweight, it's weird to say that you're not looking forward to a fight, right, but I couldn't agree more with you. The Sean O'Malley loss that Quinonez is coming off of does leave a bad taste in your mouth. Mm-hmm. But to be fair, is there any fight that he's won that leaves a good impression? Right. I can't say so, and so like. I do understand how Smolka's getting the edge in the odds right here, but strictly because he has at least proven that he can win against high-level competition, although he does have the spottiest record in the UFC. It's a 500 UFC record. His flyweight stint, he went 5-5 and had weight-cutting issues, and at 5'9", I can see why. I am glad that after he got kicked from the UFC, he went on like a 3-fight winning streak and came right back. Right. And I think he's in the division that he's going to have the most success in. Not to say that he's going to have much, though. Smolka, you're right. I do think that his BJJ is kind of overhyped, although I do see that as maybe his only path to victory here, right, where Quinonez, he might have BJJ tattooed across his chest, but he needs to stay off the ground. Right. I think that's his path to victory is to try and keep it on the feet, push the pressure, and thankfully he's not fighting somebody with Sean O'Malley's striking skills to kind of just outclass him on the feet. I think Smolka, he's lost a couple of decisions, and I think it's because he gets comfortable off of his back and doesn't really push the pace whenever he's fighting. He almost looks for the sub too much, and I think he needs to come out with a little bit of a sense of urgency, whether it's getting it to the ground or trying to establish a striking game against Quinonez. I understand where you're coming from with the Quinonez value side, although I'll lean towards Smolka just because he has proven in the past that he can beat higher level competition.
But yeah, I'm with you. It's just a toss up in my book, and I feel like it's a 50-50 shot. So I'm gonna go with the guy that I don't trust the most with my money.
What are we? Are we like almost 1-3 on us picking right now?
Yeah, not agreeing.
Yeah, we're not agreeing so far, but. Next fight, we go to welterweight with the great white Alex Morono versus Skeletor Rhys McKee, who's 10-3-1. Morono's 17-6. Morono's coming off the round 1 loss to Khaos Williams, who is now in our co-main event. Right. He's a 10-fight UFC veteran and is 6-3-1 in the UFC. So maybe not the best record, but still enough to keep him inside the UFC. Sure. And he does have some pretty quality wins. Some of those wins coming over Zach Otto and Max Griffin being the one that I hold I think that's probably his best win. He's coming out of Gracie Baja Woodlands, and he also trains at Freitas MMA. And I think that that's something that we're going to continue to see moving forward in the UFC, is that Freitas MMA is producing some high-level guys. And it doesn't stop at Morono. One thing about Morono is you're going to get a good show. You know, sure. He puts on a good fight, and I think that this one has the potential to be the fight of the night right here, just with the pace that both these guys are going to push. Now, I'm saying that not knowing too much about McKee, because it's hard to make a good impression fighting Chimaev in your debut. That being said, his Achilles heel would be a pure wrestler in Chimaev, so he didn't really get to showcase any of his skills. That being said, he has a 100% finish rate, and I think his best path to victory is to try and drag this fight out, because we have seen cardio issues in Morono in his previous fights. So, for McKee, he needs to drag this fight out. He needs to keep it on the feet. And I would compare his fight style to somebody like Neil Magny, who has, just kind of like an awkward, you don't really know how to defeat him because he is so long, especially at the welterweight division with a 78-inch reach. That's something noteworthy for sure. He's got a 6-inch reach advantage on Morono. And I really do think that if he can stuff the first couple takedowns from Morono, that we'll see a dog fight. And I don't know why Morono opened at a -300, but it's closing right now at a -190, and I think that's much closer to what we're going to see.
Man, I'm with you. I have right down here that this is super potential to be the fight of the night. It is going to be a dog fight. Alex Morono, never in a boring fight. You touched on the Freitas MMA and how much guys they're putting into fights and how many fights they're having, and they're always, if you're not in a fight camp, you are helping guys get ready for their fight. So you are always training and always at the highest level. He is a legit black belt, and we've seen him have success on the mat. And in my opinion, if this gets to the mat, I feel like he has a very good chance to sub Rhys McKee. But man, if this fight stays on the feet, I feel like Rhys McKee has a really good chance of touching that chin and putting Alex Morono to sleep. Alex Morono is coming off the loss to Khaos Williams, and we talked about that. Khaos Williams has a 77-inch reach, so just slightly under Rhys McKee there. And what we noticed is when Alex Morono first got in the pocket, he didn't get time to to read and gauge the distance. When they first engaged, Alex Morono was at a big reach disadvantage and got popped when his shots couldn't land. So he's got to be careful, man. He really does need to take a round to try to fill Rhys McKee out. Rhys McKee, training on the the European regional scene, I don't know how much it gets you ready for grapplers and stuff. And I really do feel like that's Morono's very clear path to victory here, as this is a striker versus grappler here. That being said, Morono's IQ, man, it's just not that smart. He has clear advantages on the mat against a lot of his opponents, and he decides to strike with them. And this is not a guy that you want to strike with. You touched on his 100% finish rate, and I think Rhys McKee opened at a +250 because of that Hamzat fight, without a doubt. Nobody has seen what Rhys McKee has to offer. I think Alex Morono's at a ton of physical disadvantages here, but I think he is the better fighter. I think he has the more clear path to victory if this fight hits the mat, so I'm going to lean toward him. But Rhys McKee has some great tools, man, and he fights very long, like you talked about, and he's got a very sneaky head kick that I could see landing in this fight. It is going to be a dog fight, and you can get plus money under 2.5, which is something that I'm really really interested in. He might lose this fight, man, and be 0-2 in the UFC. But I think there are very, very winnable fights in the UFC for Rhys McKee, so I don't see him going anywhere.
Not to mention being 25, I think that his ceiling is very high, and he's still somewhat new to the MMA scene, having only 14 fights. So I do think he has a lot of potential. If he were to get above plus 200 again, it'd be something I wouldn't mind taking a stab at, even if it was just a small sprinkle. But as of right now, I do see Morono winning. But I don't think the odds are justifiable, especially those opening ones. So.
I'm with you. And moving on, man, we have Ashley Yoder, who's 7-6, and Miranda Granger, who's 7-1. And this is a fight that I'm super interested in here, man. I think we are getting, favorable odds in a girl who's a much better fighter. Ashley Yoder here, she's 2-5 in her UFC career, and she's just kind of been that stepping stone for girls, losing record in the UFC, and she's got a losing amateur record before turning pro as well. So Ashley Yoder, very inconsistent, not much success. She usually has a big height and reach advantage on girls and can make the fight interesting if they can't get her to the mat. Mm-hmm. And that's just not the case here, man. She's got a girl who's going to be looking her eye to eye. And, even when Ashley Yoder gets to the mat, I'm not impressed with what I see on the mat. I'm really not impressed with what I see on the feet either. On the other side, Granger, she's been a year since we've seen her, and I think it's one of those cases like Brian Ortega, man, at 28 years old, when you take that layoff, I think she's improving every single day. Her last 2 fights have been on short notice. We've yet to see Miranda Granger with a full fight camp. I really do think this fight is Miranda Granger's fight to take. She really likes to wear on her opponents up against the cage, and up against the cage, man, she's fierce. She has great knees, and she'll drag you to the mat where she has super good control, which is, I think, where she will have success. I think she'll be able to control Ashley Yoder on the mat and land some nice ground and pound. I think we like the Miranda Granger scorecards no action line. Mm-hmm. Because Ashley Yoder can sometimes pull a decision, out of nowhere. But I think Miranda Granger also has a good chance of getting it done inside the distance.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all. You touched on Ashley Yoder's kind of questionable record overall. Miranda Granger, she's 12-0 12-0 in pro and amateur, not including her last loss to Amanda Lemus, who's usually a bantamweight. Right. So it's not another one where I don't knock her for it by any means.
Short notice as well.
Yeah, so definitely, I don't think that we got the best Miranda Granger in her last time out. I think that she's a submission specialist with 5 of her 7 pro wins coming by sub, and I also think that she has more power in her punches compared to Yoder.
Yeah.
Yoder, she's 2-5 in the UFC, and her only wins are to 2 girls who are no longer in the UFC, and Amanda Cooper and Sayura Kondo. I think that speaks volumes, and I really do think that you said stepping stone, and I couldn't have said it better myself. I think that's exactly what she is, and we're seeing it here with another young fighter who is looking to make an impact in the UFC. One thing, it's kind of a knock on Yoder. I think that she gets a lot of her fights just like Paige Van Zandt did. She's kind of a looker. Right. So I think that she gets these spots because of her looks. And you're right, she usually relies on that length, but it's not going to come into play here. She's finally fighting somebody with almost a 2-inch reach advantage and the same height. And I really do think that we're getting pretty decent odds on Granger. And with the scorecards no action, that's a playable line right there. And I think it's something that we're both looking to play, maybe even for the podcast.
For sure.
So moving on, little getting ahead of myself, but this is probably my fight of the night right here. Brendan Allen.
It's a hell of a fight.
Yes, it is. Brendan Allen versus Sean Tarzan Strickland. This is gonna be very interesting. It's at catch weight, 195 pounds, which I think it leans in Allen's favor. For sure. Sean Strickland. He's usually a welterweight. In his previous fights in the UFC, the majority of them are at 170. And although he was a huge welterweight, I do think that he's going to be at a size disadvantage against Brendan Allen. Mm-hmm. Strickland, he's been a pro since 2008, and he's a 10-fight UFC vet. And that 10-fight mark in the UFC is when I consider you a vet, pretty much. So I do think that there are some knocks on him. He's primarily a boxer, and he fights extremely tall, like almost offering that takedown. And I think that there's some recency bias going into this fight. I think the odds makers are looking at that Jack Marshman win, and realistically, Sean Strickland should be thanking the UFC for giving him an opponent that he could perfectly implement his game plan at, especially coming off the layoff. That he couldn't have asked for a better opponent. I mean, maybe John Phillips, Brendan Allen, 3-0 in the UFC, with wins over Kevin Holland, who we've seen make a huge impact these last few years.
Getting Jack Hermanson next.
Yeah, that's going to be scary. I don't even know who to pick in that one right now. But Kevin Holland, Tom Breeze, and Kyle Dawkins. One knock on Brendan Allen is that all three of those guys aren't necessarily big welterweights middleweights by any means. And he does find himself in compromising positions even when he does win those. And so that kind of worries me, but I do think that we're getting incredible value on him. And if you follow us on Twitter, we hopped on Brendan Allen early when he was a plus 124 on I think it was Sportbet. Yeah. So I do think that Allen's path to victory is to getting this to the ground. Mm-hmm. That being said, I don't think he's going to slow down at all in his career. He's been 5 rounds multiple times, and I think that for being somewhat inexperienced as a pro fighter, he has gone the full distance. He has seen into those later rounds, and although we're not going to get that in this 3-round fight, I do see him being the fresher fighter throughout the fight, especially if he can get it to the ground and get Sean outside of his comfort zone, standing and striking. He has a 86% finish rate. And I think we talked about this. The fight doesn't go the distance at plus money right now is a line that we need to hit, especially at 195ers who are coming in, above their weight. I think that they're going to be looking for the finish, both of the guys. And if we're not, if you're not totally comfortable picking Allen or Strickland, that's the line that you need to take. I think we're going to double dip and pick Allen, and fight doesn't go the distance.
I'm with you, man. I like Allen in this position, and no longer plus money. We're able to snag him at the plus 124 there. This is his third fight of 2020 with just the one fight for Sean Strickland in 2 years. Right. And against a guy like you talked about, just an absolute perfect opponent for you to come back on. And Sean Strickland really, he was screaming at him to fall and asking why he wasn't falling. But, I mean, Strickland at middleweight just doesn't have the pop on his punches that he did at welterweight. And, I mean, that's also a testament to how tough Jack Marshman is as well. But I also thought Strickland also maybe wanted a little cage time in there as well. It didn't really seem too urgent. He's 8-3 in the UFC. He's only lost to like Kamaru Usman, Ponzinibbio, and stuff. So some pretty good competition that he's faced. But at 195, if he gets stuck on the bottom with Brendan Allen, I think he is in real trouble. Mm-hmm. Brendan Allen, you talked about, 15-3 at only 24 years old. Majority of those being in LFA over 5 rounds. His 3 losses are all in the UFC, active right now. It's he is, in my opinion, I think he's the best prospect that's 25 and under that the UFC has right now. Mm-hmm. I'm really high on Brendan Allen, was super excited when those lines came out and we snagged him as a dog. I think he's at a little bit disadvantage on the feet if Sean Strickland can land that big right. But Brendan Allen's fights are always, a dog fight. They are. He's not afraid to take some to land some. But if he gets his hands on Strickland, I think he's going to be just a much bigger guy and be able to drag him down. And I like Brendan Allen to get it done inside the distance there. I'm
happy with our early bet. And as we see the line move, him becoming the favorite, I'm really happy with it.
For sure.
Yeah.
To kick off the main card, we got Eryk, your boy Anders, who's 13-5, fighting Antonio Arroyo, who is 9-3. And this is a fight that I'm super, super interested in. You got Eryk Anders taking it on short notice and is coming in as the betting favorite. And I think that's just due to the public knowledge of who Eryk Anders is and stuff. Eryk Anders, you can draw comparisons to like Greg Hardy and stuff in their football career, then coming over to MMA. And they have God-gifted athleticism and strength, man. And in my opinion, Eryk Anders has relied on that a little bit too much in the past. I think as I want to start by saying I like Eryk Anders a lot, but he's not the best fighter in my opinion. I think we might have seen the best Eryk Anders already. When I see new fights of Eryk Anders, I don't see him improving.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen that in a while. We've seen him switch weight classes already early in the career and stuff. He is already 33. Just really low volume, relies on the power. But low volume, but really doesn't even have the gas tank to hold up to that. And he does have troubles with technical strikers and like Khalil Roundtree and stuff like that. They were able to really piece him up. And then on the other side of the, standing across the octagon from him is a 6'3" Antonio Arroyo, who offers a lot of the same problems, I think. He's a huge middleweight who carries a ton of muscle, and if, I don't worry about him gassing before Eryk Anders because, his gas tank isn't nothing to write home about. So he carries a ton of muscle, man. I think he's going to be able to match the strength of Eryk Anders and not be able to be taken down and be exposed. His 3 losses are 2 by sub and then 1 to coming off Muniz there, which is a BJJ black belt who was basically able to just, take him down and hold him down. But he was able to avoid the submission, so we're seeing improvements there in Antonio Arroyo. He's super light on the feet, not as heavy as your boy. He bounces around a lot, and he has a really nice step back left counter like Dominic Reyes does. Very similar. And on the feet, man, I mean, you can't look at this guy without noticing how fast and how hard his kicks come. I think it's going to be a very, very bad problem for Eryk Anders to have to deal with, especially on short notice, back down at middleweight with the cardio issues that have already shown. My podcast play, man, is a body kick finish here for Antonio Arroyo. I think I see plenty of time in 15 minutes for him to land it. I think he comes out and he throws one immediately, switches levels with it nice, and, Eryk, once he gets worried about the body a little bit, it's going to open up the head, man. This is a hard fight stylistically for Eryk Anders here as he struggles with big technical fighters. And I got Antonio Arroyo when he first opened up as a plus 145 dog that I've already personally played. I think there's a ton of value on him.
So, I can't say that I'm completely with you on it. I think Eryk Anders has kind of reached the pinnacle of his career, and he's kind of on the decline at this point. And that's why we see him returning to middleweight after his unsuccessful attempt at light heavyweight. Mm-hmm. He is primarily a wrestler, and you would think that his go-to would be able to defeat good strikers. But like you said, he struggles with technical strikers, especially like Roundtree, Jocko, and Machida. That Machida win... he got gifted that. Yeah. I think he also got gifted the win against Gerald Meerschaert in his last time out. So, like I said, I do think he's on the decline. But that being said, Oro, he's, like you said, he's coming off that Andre Muniz loss where he was he was taken down plenty of times. And I do think that plays into Eryk Anders' wheelhouse, especially having the experience advantage. I think it's something that he will look to rely on. I'm not saying that he's going to be able to, but I see where the odds makers are getting it. I like the line better at minus 130 than I would have ever played it at minus 170. Yeah. So I think officially I'll go with Anders, but that's mostly just because Anders has seen a whole lot more in the octagon, where Ahoro, he's a 2-time Contender Series alumni, and his 1 time in the UFC he's fallen short. So I'll lean towards Anders, although I'm not confident on it at all. Moving on, we go to the strawweight division with Kay Hansen, who's 7-3, versus the Hobbit Cory McKenna, who's 5-1, and the Hobbit It's accurate. She's got maybe the shortest reach I've ever had to write down on paper at 58.5 inches. I honestly thought it was a mistake when we first started writing it down. And she's coming off the Contender Series decision win over Vanessa Demopoulos, who was 5-1 at the time. And I think it was a perfect opponent to get her inside the UFC. The UFC needs strawweights right now. And I don't blame them for signing her, even though she didn't get a finish off the Contender Series. Right. She's training at Team Alpha Male, so she's definitely got a good team around her. And I know Sarah McMahon has kind of been her go-to training partner, so I think that's an excellent girl to be training with, especially with McMahon being as big as she is. Kay Hansen, she's as green as Cory McKenna, even though her record seems to be better. McKenna has a pretty decent amateur record at 7-0. So I think experience-wise, they're on the same level. And both being 21, I think that they really do have potential to be something in the strawweight division, especially as the upper echelon of the strawweight division starts to get older, and we're seeing that in a lot of the girls. Kay Hansen, 4 of her 7 wins are by submission. She's training at 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, and it shows. She has multiple fights at flyweight, so I do think that she'll be the bigger girl, even though she's an inch smaller. I think that we'll see that she'll have a somewhat size advantage over the Hobbit. She is coming off the debut win over Jinyu Frey, who, is a decent opponent to start your UFC career on. It's not that I have much to say about either girl. It's kind of a fight that it's going to fall under the radar, and I'm not too happy about it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm not too sure why it did get bumped up to the main card over like Brendan Allen or something like that. But it is an interesting fight under 2 very young prospects, man. I kind of have a soft spot for Kay Hansen. I didn't bet as much or get to meet her in the airport like that guy who dropped like $35,000 on her as a dog. But I did bet on Kay Hansen as a dog, and I also bet the sub prop against Jinyu Frey. So I like Kay Hansen, man, and I think I like her to get another submission win here. Both of these girls are purple belts in jiu-jitsu, but there's different levels, man, and I think Kay Hansen's jiu-jitsu is going to be much better. That being said, McKenna training over at Alpha Male, I expect the wrestling to be pretty good. Cory McKenna, she is coming off the win on the Contender Series, where she was a pretty big underdog, and she did get signed there. I just like how active Kay Hansen has been lately and stuff, and I thought maybe she was one of those girls that maybe should have got a developmental contract and stuff. Maybe these are a little premature on the signing, but then you look at who Kay Hansen's fought, and 9 of her pro fights are in Invicta, so it's like, where do you send her to get developed and stuff? She's already fighting the best girls that you can offer outside the UFC. Mm-hmm. So at 21, maybe it's not a premature signing, but I think they need to be careful with how they match these girls up and bring them up, and maybe not ruin their career too early. They're both super green, but I think Kay Hansen maybe has a little higher ceiling. It's a pass maybe altogether besides the sub prop. But I do lean toward Kay Hansen.
And maybe something that we would have, I think I also lean towards Hansen, and maybe something that we would play if we could have gotten her when she opened at a minus 130. But sitting at a minus 220, you couldn't convince me of any girl fight that deserves that. So I'm with you.
Moving on to the middleweight division, we have Julian Marquez, who's 7-2, fighting Saparbek Safarov, who's 9-3. This is an interesting fight here, in my opinion. Julian Marquez is coming off a 28-month layoff, and it's not the good kind of layoff. It's the injury layoff, a back injury one in particular. It's not something that I'm ever willing to pay a minus 280 price tag on the guy, on an injury layoff like that. Julian Marquez, known for his little podcast with Kendra Lust there and stuff, that's kind of getting some steam on his off time there. And is, known for his absolute derailing of the hype train on the Contender Series of Phil Hall's, man. Put him out with one of my favorite knockouts. I've shown so many people that one. He's just one of those guys that he's hard to hold down, and he's hard to get out of there. And he will let you gas yourself trying to get him down, and then got up and KO, and really start to piece you up on the feet. And that's exactly what happened in the Phil Hall's fight. So if Saparbek can't get this fight to the mat, he's in for a very, very long night, maybe actually a very short night. Mm-hmm. Saparbek is a really good wrestler, but the wrestling transition to MMA hasn't been too smooth. His entries haven't adapted well to MMA, and he's really sloppy on the entrances, leaves himself wide open to be hit. But he has fought 11 of these 12 fights at light heavyweight, so I expect him to be a little bit bigger in there. And to definitely have the ground advantage. When I took a look at these odds, the Saparbek inside the distance is a plus 333, but the fight not going the distance is a minus 400. So the odds makers are absolutely banking on Marquez to get this done inside the distance. And I can't bank on a guy who's on a 28-month layoff with a bad back injury.
Right, I couldn't agree more. It's not that Saparbek offers anything that I'm just like, heck yes, and I want to bet on it.
Knocked out by Vellante, no way.
Right. When you lose to Gian Vellante, it's hard to come back from that, especially in the eyes of odds makers. Right. But having the size advantage, especially the 6-inch reach advantage, and in my opinion, the wrestling advantage, I do think that maybe equivalent wrestling, okay, yeah. But I think that there definitely is value, especially on the inside the distance, especially when it's a minus 400, that this fight isn't going to go the distance. That being said, Saparbek isn't, he's never been a favorite in a UFC fight, and I can understand why. Yeah. But like you said, the 28-month layoff for Julian Marquez, there's a ton of unknowns coming into this fight. And, I think the most quality win that Marquez has is probably the Darren Stewart one in 2017. But that's a Darren Stewart who was unsure about his professional career at that point and really had a lot of question marks surrounding his name. He's more recently kind of shown to be a competitor at middleweight, not necessarily upper echelon, but a competitor. You touched on Marquez's back injury. He's also coming off of an arm injury where the doctor's quoted saying that he's never seen a tear that severe, and he had to do 2 different surgeries on it. So how is he going to look? Is he going to tear something immediately and Saparbek get the win via doctor stoppage? I don't know, but there's a lot of questions surrounding this fight. And if there is so many unknowns, I kind of like banking on the guy who's the 3-1 underdog, especially with something that I'm just not confident on either way. If we can't get it inside the distance at minus 400, if we can't get any better than minus 400, I do like the Saparbek inside the distance, even if it's just a sprinkle.
Yeah, like 0.3 units to win a unit, it's definitely worth it here because, Julian Marquez, just the layoff is super worrisome, and he trains at Syndicate MMA there in Vegas, and one thing to note about Syndicate MMA is it's primarily a women's gym, man. They have Roxy, JoJo, Calderwood, Emily Whitmire. There's not a lot of just big-name guys there to train with and stuff. And how's he going to look on the scale? He's taking a guy who's, been a light heavyweight before, who's obviously going to try to implement the grappling heavy approach. How's Marquez's cardio going to be? The question marks, in my opinion, are on Julian Marquez, and I'm all right with taking the stab on Saparbek.
Yeah.
And moving on to the co-main event, man, this one has violence and 50K written all over it, man. It's Abdul, Razak, Alhassan, who's 10-2, fighting Kalen Khaos Williams, who's 10-1. Dude, this is a super, super fun fight for me, and it's one that I do not think the judges will be needed in. Razak, man, he's absolutely one of the scariest guys at 170, and getting out of the first round with this guy seems to be a tall task for many fighters. All 10 wins of him by KO. You know what you're going to get with Alhassan, man. He is going to march forward and make you pay anytime you are willing to engage with him. Standing across from him is Khaos Williams, who is coming off the knockout win over Alex Morono there that we talked about, as he was a 4-1 dog in that fight. And when you go out there and beat somebody like that so quickly, there's no easy fights from here on out. And, man, that UFC showed him that with giving him a co-main spot against a guy who puts people's lights out. Khaos Williams, though, man, he's much younger. He's 9 years younger here. But he's more tested over 15 minutes, that's for sure. I feel like he's definitely going to have the better cardio edge. And he really, really needs to make Alhassan work. He needs to try to grapple him up against the fence and stuff, try to wear him down. Because I don't think he's as technical on the feet as Alhassan. I don't think the reach advantage is going to come into play that much if this is kept at a striking distance. I think Alhassan is the more technical of the two, and his last performance, he was just, he was outmatched by a more technical striker, all while dealing with out of octagon allegations and missing weight and stuff. So I'd like Alhassan to step in here and make a statement and finish Khaos Williams.
I wouldn't mind that either. I mean, he is coming. I'll be the first to say Alhassan was one of my favorite fighters when he initially came into the UFC, but because of the layoff and because of the questions surrounding his return after the allegations, it is tough to bank on him, especially knowing that he will and can only win by KO. And cardio issues do come into play. Missed weight in his last fight. He obviously has the build that eats up a lot of energy right off the bat. And that being said, Khaos Williams, also a fast starter. I do want to note that he has a 2-0 boxing record, and he also prefers, to keep it on the feet. I think that with the odds right now, the value is on the Khaos Williams side. He's training with Joaquin Buckley up at Murcielago MMA in Michigan, and I think that that's a perfect opponent to be, challenging yourself because, I mean, Buckley swings with power. He swings from the hip. He's bigger than Alhassan, and it'll give him a lot of good looks. And I think that he might come out with a game plan that would be impressive to somebody who doesn't know much about Khaos Williams. Now, I'm speaking about that kind of with a lot of unknowns as well, but I think the values on Khaos Williams, I love Alhassan, and he'll give you a good fight, but after that Munir Laziz fight, you know, you did get to see him outside of that first round, and you did see him suffer. And so I do think that there's a lot of questions coming into this. I think that it's going to be a banger of a fight, but I think I'll go with Khaos Williams. That's a pretty risky pick, but like I said, I do think that there's going to be a lot of upsets on this card, so I'll go ahead and pick Khaos Williams, and I know I'll be in the minority as far as that decision.
Yeah, it's a super, super good fight, man. Neither one of these guys have ever been finished, but I think both of them offer the power to put each other to sleep, regardless of that. It is a banger, man. And you know,
and something else to note is Khaos Williams. He is 10-1, but he has an extensive 15-fight amateur record as well. So coming in here with 26 fights worth of experience, and Joaquin Buckley is that training partner. I really do think that he's going to offer more than what the odds makers are showing.
Yeah, it's a close fight, man. Like, I don't think the judges are needed, but I don't think there's any value there in playing it. I haven't looked. Maybe I bet it's set at 1.5. No way, it's 2.5.
No, and I think we looked at the under, or the fight doesn't go to decision. It's like a -500 or something. Yeah. So
banger of a co-main event, man, and moving on to the main event, which is a good one too.
Main event, you know, we were supposed to get RDA versus Islam Makhachev. Makhachev had to pull because of injury. Thankfully, we have the Irish Dragon, Paul Felder, who was only able to make this fight because he was training for a triathlon whenever
and supposed to be commentating it.
Right. And, you know, to note, he's one of my favorite commentators right now. I think that he does a really good job at it. Here's some questions. Like, RDA is the more proven fighter by a long shot. You know, after losing the belt at 155 to Eddie Alvarez and then subsequently losing to Tony Ferguson, he moved up to 170, where he went 1-4 and went on a pretty decent streak in his first five fights in at welterweight, but he's 1-4 in his last 5, and I think that that's why we're seeing him move back down to 155, which is a risky decision at 36 years old. Although, if you check his Instagram, he's in the best shape of his life. He looks like a mini Paulo Costa. So, I mean, no knock to him. I think that he's going to have a relatively easy weight cut, or at least better than what he was doing whenever he was at 155. Absolutely. And at 5'8", I think that this is the right decision for him. He was undersized in the welterweight division, and it showed with him being taken down against the better grapplers of the 170-pound division. One thing to note is that if this fight does go 1 minute and 49 seconds, RDA will become the second fighter to reach 7 hours of octagon time in UFC history, and I think that that's noteworthy. But it also speaks to, you know, how much damage has he taken with 42 fights on his record and 36 years of age, 7 hours of octagon time. That's going to wear on you. And then cutting another 15 pounds than you're used to at 36 years old. I think there's a lot of questions coming into this fight. And I'm kind of making an argument for Paul Felder as I say this out loud. You know, he's sitting at an underdog, and I really do wonder how much these lines would move if he was the Dan Hooker fight. That's what I'm kind of talking about right here. He is coming off a split decision loss to Dan Hooker, and I'm not saying it's a robbery by any means because there was no clear winner in my opinion, but let's say he does get the Dan Hooker victory. If he's coming in this off of a win off of Dan Hooker, are the odds going to be the same? I don't think so. I think that, you know, if he had that Hooker name on his resume right now, I think that he would come in as pick-em odds roughly. And so I do think that there's value on Paul Felder, especially because Felder, you know, we say RDA looks good at 155. Felder's an absolute tank at 155. And, you know, he's not giving up any size to RDA. So I don't see RDA, you know, having just complete dominance over him by any means. And sitting at almost 2-1 favorite in RDA's corner, I don't think that it's a bad move to take a stab at Felder, although I'm not totally confident on it. I think again, I'll pick Felder as the underdog as my official pick, but I'm not totally confident on it.
So I am going to lean toward RDA here. For me, always been a huge fan of RDA, man, and I'm a firm believer that if he can get that weight cut under control with Khabib out of the picture, I think RDA has a damn good chance at cracking that top 5 in the division. I really have high hopes for that guy. He mixes his game together great. He's a super, super good striker, and he has very, very underrated grappling, which I think is going to come into play really big time in this fight here. He is coming down from 170, and I think that's going to help. You know, he's used to fighting these bigger guys, and now he's getting Paul Felder, and so it's not nothing new to him to have a guy that's a couple inches bigger than him. Standing across from him, man, Paul Felder, thank God he stepped in and saved the day, man. I was really wanting the main event to go over for this one, but I don't know what kind of position Paul Felder's in. You know, he's pretty open about retiring and wanting to commentate and stuff, and been training for a triathlon, so he's in shape, but is that fight shape? How sharp are his tools? How sharp are his hands? How good are his kicks? And, I mean, I'll be the first to tell you, as a person who used to run a lot, when we started jiu-jitsu, that's a completely different type of cardio.
It is not the same.
It is not the same as biking, as running, as swimming, by no means. So I wonder how that shape's going to transition over to Paul Felder, who, in my mind, had kind of turned off the switch to fighting. I really thought he was going to stick to the commentating end of it, as he talked about only coming back for big fights, and this isn't one of those big fights you come back for, in my opinion. So
maybe a winnable fight though for him,
but definitely a winnable fight, and probably some money in front of him here to save the day. But at the same time, probably I bet RDA was jumping for joy not to get a 6th grappler in a row or something.
Right.
His manager needs to be fired. But it's a super great fight, man. RDA has just fought the absolute best at the best for years. I truly think a 165 class RDA would have so much success in.
And both of these guys, we've seen Paul Felder talk about him walking around at 190 plus. And
he had RDA on the cusp of getting the red panty night with Conor. But without him pulling out there, we never would have gotten the Nate Diaz feud and stuff. So
right.
I can't knock that, but RDA is he's a better fighter here in my opinion. He's been in the camp, he's not the one who's probably back to training this week. I checked Paul's Instagram, and I think the last fight post I saw was back in August, so I don't know how much fight training he's doing. RDA's got a very, very nice straight left, and a very nice left kick that he does sneak underneath the elbows there into the ribs, and might zap the gas tank of Paul Felder there, but something to note here, the pressure and the damage and stuff that Paul Felder puts on you is unreal. I saw a stat on Twitter today that 8 of the last 9 opponents Paul Felder has fought, they've went on to lose their next fight. And never in a boring fight. Paul Felder really does put the damage on guys. But at the same time, he does take some himself, These guys do tend to go to decision a lot, but the under 4.5 is plus money. That's 22.5 minutes for a guy, to get out of there, and one of them taking it on short notice, not exactly in fight shape. So I think that's worth the stab as well.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all.
You got anything that you want to wrap up as far as that? And I know we're going to do our fight of the night.
That's all I got for the main event, but we can go ahead on fight of the night. You want to start it off?
Yeah, so I know we both had talked about it earlier. I don't want to steal the Alex Morono and Rhys McKee. I think that's going to be absolute fire. I'm going to go with Luis Smolka and Quinonez. I know it's a fight that I said was, one that I wasn't playing and stuff, and I think it could be a shit show. Mm-hmm. But I feel like both of these guys possibly get dropped at one time. I think we see some exciting scrambles on the mat. Not one that I'm going to play, but one I'm going to sit back and enjoy. I think it'll be a fun little bantamweight scrap.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm going to go with the catchweight bout between Brendan Allen and Sean Strickland. I think that one's guaranteed fireworks. And like I said, getting plus odds at fight doesn't go the distance, I think is insane. So I'm ready for us to hop on that.
And who's your fighter to watch?
Shoot, fighter to watch. I'm going to go with... I'm going to go with Rhys McKee. I think that he's got a lot of questions surrounding his UFC return after the beating he took from Chimaev. So I'm actually really excited to see what he can do inside the octagon.
Nice. So my fighter to watch is going to be RDA here in the main event. The late change of opponent dropping back down to 55, but it's definitely a winnable fight for RDA here. I think he has some advantages on the feet and on the mat. I think it's a good one for him to get right back there in the the top 5 there of the lightweight division, as he's fighting the number 6 Paul Felder here. So a win here, he might just take that number right from Paul Felder and slide in there at 6. So I'm gonna go with RDA, man. But top to bottom, it's a really good night of fights here. I'm glad we did get a main event that came together. 4 subscribers away from someone getting a poster here, so make sure you guys are commenting, letting us know who you were going to win this week. Anything else you want?
No, that's it.
Take